Hello, everyone. Welcome into the Benjamin Cure Show on this Monday, January 20th, 2025. We have got a packed show today. So much going on today. It's obviously a holiday. Today's Inauguration Day. We've also got the College Football National Championship tonight. So much is going on right now. That's the reason why, honestly, I'm running a little late on the start time and on the upload time of this episode, but you guys will be watching it before the start of the National Championship, and we are going to talk all football today. We've only got a few football games left. We've got the Super Bowl, we've got the AFC Championship and the NFC Championship, and the College Football Playoff, which means we only have 4 football games left this season. And while that is low-key incredibly depressing to me, it is also so exciting because I know that the best football has yet to be played. The AFC Championship is going to be an amazing game. So let's start there. Let's start with Josh Allen first because that was the last game last night, the primetime game. Sunday Night Football on CBS, a little different feel with Romo on the call and Nance, but you know what? It was a great game, and it lived up to the hype, and I think in the end, it ends up being just as close of a game as we thought it was going to be. 27-25, the Ravens end up falling to the Buffalo Bills in Orchard Park. What a game. So many people, I will assume, because I haven't watched any of the sports shows this morning in full transparency, but I will assume there are plenty of people out there this morning that are ready to blame Lamar Jackson, and honestly, that is the easy way out. I don't know if I'm willing to go that far. Yes, Lamar Jackson was not perfect. I think Lamar Jackson played a good football game. I think he played good enough to win. But in the end, he was facing a team in the Buffalo Bills that really does feel like a team of destiny in so many people's eyes. And although I personally believe that the true team of destiny here is the Kansas City Chiefs, who I'll talk about in a second, that Buffalo Bills team is playing their best football they've ever played. And right now, it feels like they're more of a team than they've ever been. And I know that feels like a very cerebral thing, and that's very subjective depending on who you are outside looking in. But that is a football team that has been through so much change. Their defense is not as good this season as it has been in years prior. Their offense is not as electric, but you know what? It is more efficient than ever before. And I've told you, losing a wide receiver one, there is now precedent for this. Losing an elite wide receiver one and your offense becomes better with your superstar quarterback because you allow them to drop back, think, just take what the defense gives them, and not let your quarterback be worried about an elite talent who is probably going to have a little bit of a diva-ness to his persona and who he is, whether it's a Stephon Diggs or a Tyreek Hill, because we have precedent now with both the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. Look, these are great quarterbacks, but you've got a wide receiver that's nagging you, hey, I need the ball 10 times a game, 15 times a game. Sometimes as a quarterback, and we've heard this from Tom Brady now that he's entered into the booth, which, by the way, I think he did a great job this weekend. I think he's coming into his own. I'm glad last week they announced his agent, Don Yee. He's going to be staying in the booth for the next 10 years. He's going to not play out, but work out the remainder of his Fox Sports contract. I don't mind that. I'm happy. I'm glad that we have Tom Brady talking about football every single weekend during the biggest games of the week. With that being said, this does feel like now, as Brady has mentioned, you are seeing the end result of no longer as a quarterback having to be worried about that elite offensive talent, that elite perimeter weapon who sometimes is going to get in your ear. And I think A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts are a perfect example of this. Yes, he's going to get him the ball. Yes, A.J. Brown is an important part of that offense. But we've seen throughout times in the season where there are patches where, you know what, they get on each other's nerves and tensions do flare up. And that is football. Guys are going to be passionate when there's wins and losses and millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on the line. I understand it. But there is something to an elite quarterback not having to deal with that headache and just being free to drop back, read defenses, and take what the defense gives them. Now, here's what I will say about Lamar. Lamar Jackson did turn the ball over twice. And I think Lamar Jackson had a really good game. And I'm not saying it's all Lamar Jackson's fault, but we would be idiots to ignore Lamar Jackson did have 2 turnovers, and the Ravens themselves had 3 turnovers, and that's what the football game comes down to. It's not that Josh Allen was spectacular. Josh Allen had 128 passing yards, but Josh Allen had 0 turnovers, and that's where the difference comes in for this football team, and I think that's, in the end, what is going to end up helping the team that goes all the way and wins the big game. We've got the Chiefs, we've got the Eagles, we've got the Commanders, we've got the Bills, of course. It is going to be an amazing postseason of football. But yeah, I look at the Lamar Jackson thing and I think, look, I'm not blaming Lamar Jackson, but he did have 2 turnovers. The Ravens had 3. Mark Andrews did fumble the football. Mark Andrews, who is probably one of the most important parts of the Ravens team in a heartbreaking game. I tweeted about this last night. he's going to feel this one for a long time. It's going to sting Mark Andrews for a long time that he not only had the fumble, the turnover earlier in the football game on a wide open throw, a 16-yard completion, but he also had the drop that would have tied the game. He was in the perfect spot. The ball was placed as well as it could have been a little higher, maybe. But you know what? It's Mark Andrews' job as a tight end, both a wide receiver and a blocker, to make that play, and he didn't. And I'm not going to blame Mark Andrews. I don't want to go all in on these guys because they did have an incredible season, and I don't think it's fair to go off on them when in the end they only lost by one possession. But it is a game of inches, and it did come down to one possession, and it came down to one play. And in the end, the Ravens on several occasions could not deliver on that singular play. That's what it comes down to. So let's talk about this Commanders-Lions game because I was excited over the weekend. I don't know if you saw me. I told you last week on this show, call me crazy, and many of you did. I believe that Jayden Daniels is a better quarterback than Jared Goff, and I trust Jayden Daniels more than I trust Jared Goff in the biggest spots because even though it's just his rookie season, I have seen Jayden Daniels put in the reps. I've seen in the postseason, I've seen in the regular season when everything is on the line, one possession to take the lead, to win it all, to put you back in a situation where you need to win or back in a situation where you're leading because you're trailing. I have seen Jayden Daniels 5 or 6 times this season come back from behind in the fourth quarter and lead a game-winning drive. He is the true definition of ice in his veins. Jayden Daniels proved on Saturday, why he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And you know what? There's a lot of talk made about Caleb Williams in the offseason, and I was a part of that conversation for sure. I thought Caleb was so talented. I thought he was the perfect prospect. He reminded me so much in college of what we saw from Patrick Mahomes at the NFL level that I thought, how can this not work out? He's such an electric player. But in the end, this is where draft analysis comes into play. We now have 2 years in a row where the second overall pick ends up being significantly better, and I think at this point undisputedly better than the first overall pick. C.J. Stroud is undisputedly better than Bryce Young, even though Bryce Young, to his credit, had an amazing close to the year, 5 touchdowns in his last regular season game, and I love that he'll be able to build upon that going into the next year. But C.J. Stroud is a better quarterback than Bryce Young today, tomorrow, and the day after that. I look at what we saw this season. Caleb Williams. I think he'll get a great coach. I'm going to talk about it later. I think it's going to be Ben Johnson. I don't think it's going to be Ben Johnson. Because of the reports that are coming out now that we're hearing based on how that'll play out. I'll get to it in a second. We can confidently say that Jayden Daniels is the better quarterback today than Caleb Williams is. And I would take Jayden Daniels over every quarterback taken in his draft class. I'm taking Jayden Daniels over Bo Nix. I'm taking Jayden Daniels over Caleb Williams. I'm taking Jayden Daniels over Drake May. I'm taking Jayden Daniels over Joe Milton. I'm taking I'm taking Jayden Daniels over Joe Milton. That is a quarterback that comes once in a generation, once in a lifetime, once every 7 years, 10 years. The Mahomes, the Bradys. I put Jayden Daniels in that class. And I think Lamar Jackson is very talented. Josh Allen is a great quarterback talent physically, what he's capable of, his strength, his size, the way he can move. But Jayden Daniels is one of those once-in-a-lifetime talents or once-in-a-few lifetimes talents that is just one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And I think when I look at the current landscape of the quarterback pictures, Patrick Mahomes, to me, I don't care what his regular season stats are. Patrick Mahomes is the number one quarterback in the NFL. To me, he's one. Number 2, I would say, is Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson would be 3 because of the lack of postseason success. I'm not blaming the loss on him, but we have to acknowledge that Lamar Jackson is 3-5 in the postseason, and when other guys have succeeded in the postseason, equally great talent like a Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson can't get over the hump. And while I'm not saying that's everything, it's not nothing either. 4, I would say, is Joe Burrow, who is such a great talent, but by the same token, like you could argue, he had better passing stats than Lamar Jackson and than Josh Allen. He's an amazing player, but the lack of postseason success or postseason entry over the past few years puts him at 4, in my opinion. 5, I make the case for Jayden Daniels, and I think Jalen Hurts is a really good quarterback. I think he's had moments where he's been great and had great stretches in his career, obviously that Super Bowl run. With that being said, I would take Jayden Daniels over Jalen Hurts. And I was called crazy last week when I said I would take Jayden Daniels over Jared Goff because I trust Jayden Daniels more down the stretch of football games when you're down or in a 2-minute drill or a gotta-have-it possession. I trusted Jayden Daniels more than I trust Jared Goff, and you guys called me crazy. I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to be right again. I trust Jayden Daniels more than I trust Jared Goff. I trust Jayden Daniels more than I trust Jalen Hurts and down the stretch of a football game in the 2-minute drill. And we're going to get to see it this weekend and this upcoming weekend in what will be the NFC Championship between the Eagles and the Washington Commanders. So I can't wait. Like I said, I assume the Eagles are the better football team. Their secondary is significantly better and healthier than the Lions, and I think that'll ultimately be the difference, and that's why, let's sober up here a little bit. I think the Eagles are ultimately going to win that football game, but once again, I have to put this caveat in there that I know people hate, but it's the reality. If this game is close in the fourth quarter or in the last 2 minutes of the football game, I trust Jayden Daniels and his playmaking ability and his skill set and his decision-making in the last 2 minutes of a football game over most quarterbacks on earth. There is not a quarterback after Patrick Mahomes that I would take over Jayden Daniels in the 2-minute drill. And I think ultimately that's what's going to play out on this game. I think it's going to be a close one. And for that reason, I would probably say, if it's close, give me Jayden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. Now, let's move on. Because we saw this weekend all that talk on Saturday, the first playoff football game of the weekend, Kansas City Chiefs versus Houston Texans. And everybody is screaming, oh, that game was rigged. And the referees gave them that call, and they gave them this phantom roughing the passer call. And it's rigged, and that's the reason why the Houston Texans aren't moving on. The Houston Texans, scored 12 points, gave up 8 sacks, and missed 3 kicks. And you want to tell me the reason that they're not in the playoffs is because it's rigged? No, their offensive line has been terrible all season long. C.J. Stroud did have a sophomore slump statistically. I would blame that more so on the offensive line than I would him. But the stats don't lie. C.J. Stroud was not as lights out this season as he was last year. Not as lights out this playoff as he was last year. And in the end, this Houston Texans team was not better situationally, and they definitely were not better on special teams than the Kansas City Chiefs, who are the smartest football team in the NFL, with the highest football IQ of any football team in the NFL, who have a better special teams than the Houston Texans, and who are the best coach team, the best staff remaining in the NFL right now. Andy Reid, Spags, that's all there is to it. And so for people to say, as passionately as they have, oh, it's rigged, and that's the reason the Kansas City Chiefs are moving on, excuse me, the Kansas City Chiefs lost 2 games all year long. They have the best quarterback in the NFL. They have the best third down conversion rate in the league. They are the best team in the final 2 minutes of the football game in all facets and phases of the football game, not just on offense, but on defense and on special teams. And they have had opportunities to prove it over the course of the regular season and postseason, and they have. And you want to tell me the reason the Texans didn't win is because the football game is rigged because Taylor Swift is in the crowd? Buddy, if you scored more than 12 points, if you gave up less than 8 sacks, and if you didn't miss 3 kicks, maybe you would be moving on. But the reality is that is a terrible offensive line that has been decimated by injuries, yes, but is also not as good this season as they were last year. They are missing perimeter talent. Their quarterback had a sophomore slump, and they were not better situationally than the Kansas City Chiefs. That's what it comes down to. So don't tell me this is a rigged football game or it's rigged for the Kansas City Chiefs because you just look stupid. That's the reality. Before we go, there's a story I want to touch upon here about Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford will take some time to think about his future. And so I saw that after the game. And to me, Matthew Stafford, it would be hard for me to believe that Matthew Stafford is going to hang it up after this season. I know that he said he's going to take some time to think about it. But in the end, I think it would be impossible for Matthew Stafford to walk away right now knowing I've got one of the best offenses in the league. I've got some great young talent. I have the best head coach I've ever had in Sean McVay, who is a brilliant offensive mind, who is going to put me in the best position to win out of any of the football coaches, arguably outside of Andy Reid in the NFL. He's going to keep me in close games. He's going to coach this team the right way. He's going to give me great talent. He's going to put me in the best spot to be able to win these football games. I've got a great young defense with some really nice young pieces who we're not paying yet. I think it's hard for Matthew Stafford to look at that and say, I'm going to walk away. Matthew Stafford can comfortably look at his division and say, I'm the best quarterback in the division right now, and I'm going to be the best quarterback in the division for the minimum of the next 2, maybe even 3 years, because none of the other teams in the division are in position to move up right now to get a better quarterback than the one they have and draft a superstar in the upcoming draft classes. And Kyler Murray, Brock Purdy, and Geno Smith, I don't think they're bad quarterbacks, but they're not better than Matthew Stafford, because I think Matthew Stafford on his best day can give you top 10 quarterback performances and is reasonably a top 15 quarterback in the NFL, I would say comfortably top half of the starters in the NFL. Matthew Stafford ranked 13th and 15th in most categories this season as a quarterback. I don't think he's top 10 solidified on every single night of the season. I think he can give you top 10 performances on any given night. I think he's still a really good quarterback. I think Sean McVay and that Rams team and that staff puts you in an excellent position to win every single weekend. And I think the Rams can comfortably say, we've got the best head coach in the division. We've got the best quarterback. We can win this division for the next 2-3 years. We've got great young talent we're not paying yet. And our defense, which was going to be our biggest weakness going into the year after we lost Aaron Donald, we drafted excellent. And we've got some really, really good, solid young pieces on our defense that we don't have to pay yet. Why not run it back? Like I said, I've said this a couple times. I think it would be very hard for Matthew Stafford to walk away from that. I know Matthew Stafford is due $3 or $4 million in March as a bonus, a roster bonus. I know that next season he's looking at a $23 million base salary that is not guaranteed. I would assume if they restructure the deal, give him more guarantees, he'll be back and playing his best football or as good as he can at this point in his NFL career. But yeah, I understand Matthew Stafford saying, I want to take some time. I don't think that's fake. I think he definitely has some things to think about, but I think ultimately in the end, it's hard to walk away from NFL superstardom like that, and it's hard to walk away from a division that is very tough, but is very, very winnable with the staff that you have, with the roster you have, with your coach, and knowing I can still sling it. I'm still one of the best arm talents in the league. Let's go out there and run this thing back, and let's see if we can do it once more. Last thing here, I lied. Ben Johnson, a lot of moving parts. We heard a report over the weekend that the Raiders and Tom Brady have not officially, but unofficially offered Ben Johnson the largest head coaching contract in the NFL right now to make him the highest paid. Currently, it's Andy Reid with about $20 million a year. If that's true, Ben Johnson is walking away from the Lions. And you know what? I think regardless of if the Raiders deal is real or not, I think Ben Johnson is done with the Lions. I don't think he leaves in bad taste, but I also believe that Ben Johnson at this point looks at the Lions and says, I think I've done all I can. I think I've not overstayed my welcome, but I think I've done all I can do here. It's time to move on to that next chapter. It's time to start my own franchise. You're not going to get any closer right now than you have with the Lions. And I think the second that Ben Johnson leaves, that window closes because I love Dan Campbell. I love Jared Goff. But we've seen Jared Goff. I don't trust him in big spots as much as I did 2 weeks ago after what I've seen. And I've told you all season long, Dan Campbell, although he's one of the best motivators of men in the NFL, he's not one of the best situational minds in the NFL, and he makes decisions that make you scratch your head or want to throw something at your TV. And usually the Lions' excellent schemes and Ben Johnson's excellent coaching and play calling bail them out of what should be losses sometimes, and we saw that at times this year. I think ultimately the window closes when Ben Johnson walks away, and I think Ben Johnson ends up walking away, whether it's to the Raiders or to the Bears. We will see. With that being said, we've got the national championship tonight. I cannot wait. Ohio State, Notre Dame. I think ultimately Ohio State feels like the team of destiny here. I think they end up winning the football game, and I think Notre Dame just puts a nice. They can't put anything on it this. They're going to end up being the runner-up, but I think it'll be a nice close to the season for a program that has totally brought themselves back to the forefront under Marcus Freeman. I think he's an excellent coach, and I can't wait to see how the game plays out, but I ultimately would pick Ohio State to win. And in the AFC Championship, by the way, I've got to put this on record, I am obviously picking the Kansas City Chiefs now, tomorrow, the day after, every single day of the week, and twice on Sunday. I'll see you next week.